It's a contrast of sorts, famine in the midst of plenty. Our features editor Farida Karoney has just returned from Turkana district and parts of Rift Valley and will be telling us about starving families in Turkana district and farmers complaining of too much rain in Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu districts. Sights of emaciated children and starving adults are commonplace in most of Turkana district. The government says it has dispatched relief food supplies to populations facing famine, but from the ground, the supplies are not sufficient.
This is Kaleng in Turkana North, 200 kilometers north of Lodwar town. It is one of those divisions severely affected by the famine. On this day, there was word that there would be government famine relief maize. Hunger-stricken people walked some from as far as 30 kilometers away to Kaleng shopping center. But the lorry that was ferrying the relief maize never got here until late evening. It broke down on the way.
I think government should also employ an approach of using small vehicles like Land Rovers, Land Cruisers, at least to take food to those who are suffering out from the areas which lorries cannot reach.
Even when the lorry does finally get here, each person present will be entitled to only a tinful of maize, just 500 grams until the next monthly ration.
What the government is distributing now is not actually enough to feed the 250,000 people.
We have been requesting at least from government about 12,000 bags of maize, 90 kgs per month.
World Vision Kenya has already responded to food appeals by supplying 7 metric tons of Unimix porridge for children under 5, while Doctors Without Frontiers Belgium has supplied 21 metric tons of high-protein biscuits. This is, however, too little for the entire district. But in the rough, dry and bumpy terrain in Kaleng lives an aging Irish Catholic priest. This is one man providing a much-needed lifeline to many locals. The local people of Kaleng are luckier than most of their other starving counterparts in other divisions in the districts. The local Catholic priest, Father Robert McCabe, has undertaken a lawn feeding program, offering lunch and supper to over 480 people, most of them the elderly and young children. We were just in time for lunch. And standing on the queue appeared to be delaying salvation for these young ones. They scrambled, fell and cried as each struggled for their share. Sadly though, Father McCabe is running out of supplies. And when we left Kaleng a few days ago, he told us he had only 2 weeks of stock, after which he hopes someone will come to his aid. On several occasions, he has used his own money to buy food just to keep the program running. But his cash is fast running out.
In the beginning, I wanted really to give it to those who are malnourished, you know, and we had a list of those that were malnourished. But then more and more people came, and the feeding scheme became bigger and bigger, and our stock is getting very low now. So we're approaching a situation that we really need more food here.
Some of the people on Father McCabe's feeding program are already too malnourished to feed on solids. Ekuye and Mary Moog was too weak to go back home. Father McCabe feeds them on milk and biscuits. The government says no lives have been lost as a result of the famine, but local leaders maintain some may have succumbed to the hunger pangs. They, however, say it is hard to place a figure on the deaths.
It's very hard to get the exact numbers, but some of these old widows, you see, they're in great danger because nobody seems to care about them. Their husbands have died, and they're very old and they're very weak. So they're the ones that we have special pity for, and the little children.
It's very critical. I would call it an emergency state, because if people have started dying, in the last report we got from the Ari Lands program, we were told of 30 people who died around this area. So I would feel that is a threat.
We have not actually lost people.
There are reports that the little food that there is not reaching those who need it most because chiefs are either stealing it or giving it to their relatives and cronies. But one thing is certain, the people of Turkana need food aid and they need it urgently. Farida Karoney, KTN, Turkana.
Farida, could you tell us what you observed when you went to Turkana district?
Well, Christine, I would say the food situation there is really critical. There's a serious, severe food shortage. Every home I went to, I met devastating scenes of children who have not had food for days. They're just wailing, crying, elderly people who can hardly walk because they are too hungry even to stand up. The situation is really bad, and the government relief food they get is really little, 500 grams for one person per month. For how long can one feed on that amount of food?
These are pastoral communities. What happened to their animals?
Well, according to a rapid assessment report from the Office of the President, 50% of the animals either died or were sold off to buy food, and for maintenance generally.
So they don't have even the animals now?
A few people still have their animals, mostly goats and sheep, because that kind of environment is too difficult for cattle at this time. So most of the cattle have been moved down south. The southern parts are not very dry, but the goats and the sheep are still in the north and central divisions. But it's just, there's no pasture, so you can't even depend on the animals for the food.
How long have these people gone without food?
Well, as you know, Christine, Turkana is a largely arid and semi-arid district. There are recurrent droughts, but in the 80s and the 1990s, the frequencies has become a bit higher, and there's also increasing incidents of insecurity. The Pokots are always raiding the Turkanas. The Meriles from Ethiopia are always raiding the Turkanas. So these people depend largely on their livestock. And when they don't have their livestock, they have no food.
Now, are there any non-governmental organizations, be they local or international, that are working in those communities?
No, not at the moment. They used to be there 2-3 years ago. Oxfam was there. I think the Red Cross was also there. But for some reason, they moved out. So they depend largely on government relief food, which is not much. 5,000 bags for 250,000 people.
We are having the government sending over bags of maize and beans. Is that what these populations need? I looked at some of those children and I don't think they can handle a meal of maize and beans.
Well, actually, you're wrong. The government just sends maize. These people are starving. They cannot digest solids. For those kids, what they need at the moment is actually liquid food, maybe Unimix porridge, high-protein biscuits. But the government is just sending them dry maize, no oil, no nothing. So I think really they should be given more liquid food, especially for those who are severely malnourished.
But elsewhere, it's harvest time and current rains are unwelcome. Farmers in Uasin Gishu are harvesting their maize prematurely to save it from the torrential rains.
Rains, and too much of it, is what maize farmers in Nandi, Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu would rather not have at this time. It's harvesting time and the farmers are worried that the rains might decimate further their crop after an armyworm invasion earlier in the year.
Shida ni mvua. Tumeona mvua nyingi ndio tunakata. Sasa hiyo inalazimisha hata kama ichekauka vizuri unaikata kwa kufuatana na mvua vile inanyesha.
Now is about 3 days when we've had heavy rains. But I think we are praying for it to subside, because if it continues, and then we shall lose again because of the rotting issue. Most of the maize will go bad because of the heavy rains.
Many say they've had to stock the maize even before it completely dried up to save the crop from rotting. Due to the current food shortage in other parts of the country, middlemen are buying the maize, dry or not.
This time they don't care. Whether it's dry or not, they are doing what? They're buying. And whether they are taking them, we don't know.
When we visited Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu, middlemen were drying the maize in the morning sun. They said they bought the maize for just over 1,000 shillings per 90-kilogram bag. And this season, like the last, the farmers are angry. They claim both the National Cereals and Produce Board and the middlemen are buying their crop at throwaway prices.
What did you see in Uasin Gishu?
Uasin Gishu, Trans Nzoia. I must say, when I was driving down from Lodwar to Kitale, I saw fields and fields of maize. I said, what irony. People are starving, there's so much maize. So we decided to drive into the farms, and farmers are harvesting barely dry maize. So we asked them, why are you doing this? They said, if we don't harvest now, it's all going to rot. There's too much rain coming at the wrong time. So they have so much maize, they're harvesting in a hurry because it's too wet. Basically, there's too much food, and yet some people are really dying of hunger.
When you are in Trans Nzoia and Uasin Gishu, did you see or hear of any arrangements that are being made to transport that food to those starving people in Turkana?
No, not at all. What's happening is that these people depend on maize just like the Turkanas depend on their cows. So what they told me is that they're selling off their maize right now because they want to prepare for January school fees and other responsibilities. So they're not really thinking about those who are dying. They're thinking about their immediate needs.
Do they know that there are populations that are very hungry and in need of this maize that they are harvesting?
Yes, they do. They even told me that some middlemen are buying it, whether it's dry or wet. They're just buying it to go and sell off to the places that need maize at the moment. Yeah, they do know. But I think their concerns are different from those who are starving. Yeah.
For now, the challenge is on the government to devise methods of moving food from areas with surplus produce to deficit areas. That's the KTN News at 7. I am Christine Goku. Have a good evening.